In this next section, we're going to set up a GitHub account so we can create our central remote repository. So I've begun by going to github.com, and I'm going to click on the Plans, Pricing, and Signups button. At the very top here, there's a free for open source option. Go ahead and click the Create a Free Account. And now let's go ahead and fill in the form. And then I'm going to click Create an Account. GitHub has a great step-by-step help process once you create an account. If you click this first step here, it will give you step-by-step instructions on how to set up Git. So first, download and install Git. We already took care of that in an earlier video. Our next step is to set up SSH keys. Now this is a public-private pair combination that will allow you to dynamically work with the remote site without having to log in every time. Now, if you've never heard of public-private keys before, it's a good idea to read up on them a little bit so you understand, at least in general, how they work. It's actually pretty interesting stuff. But for the purposes of this series, what we're going to do is simply set up the keys so that they work, and then we'll move forward. So if we read through this, it says that our first step is to open up a terminal session or a command line session. So depending on what operating system you're on, you'll use something different. If you scroll up to the top, you'll see that there's instructions for Windows and Linux, and the right instructions for the operating system that you're on should display automatically. If you're following along in Windows, then you can simply use the git bash tool that we installed earlier to use the command line. Now, if you already have some keys that you've set up for some previous project, take note of this line here. It says, if you have an existing key pair, you can skip to step 4. But let's go ahead and walk through this process as if we don't have one. So our first step is to navigate into our user directory. That's what the tilde there is for. And then the hidden folder SSH within that directory. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump to the terminal and clear the back scroll here. And I'm going to go to cd and then ~/.ssh. Now if this folder doesn't exist, then we can go ahead and skip to step 3, which is generating a new key pair. But if one does exist, then we need to go ahead and back up and remove the existing ones. If you're comfortable doing this on the command line, you can simply follow these commands. The first is to get a sense of what's in your directory by using the ls command, and it should show you. And then we want to make a directory called key backup. We can make it anything, but we're simply going to move everything into this directory. Our next step is to copy any files that begin with ID_RSA, and notice the asterisk here that indicates anything that comes after that initial string, and we're going to move it into that new folder that we created. In this next step, we simply remove all of those original files. Now, if we were going to do this outside of the command line, we would simply navigate to our SSH folder. So I've done that here. We would create a new folder called key backup, and we would take anything that begins with ID_RSA, and there's two files here, ID_RSA and ID_RSA.pub, and we'd move them into key backup. So I'm just going to take them and drag them over here. Okay, now our next step is to generate our new SSH key. And we do that using a command line tool called SSH keygen. So if we look at the command here, it's SSH-keygen, that's the command. We pass it the T parameter with the RSA value, and then the C parameter along with our email here. So let's just go ahead and copy this first bit and jump back to the command line, paste it in, and then put in our email address. Now it says generating public-private RSA key pair, and enter file in which to save the key. In parentheses here it has the default, and let's go ahead and leave it at the default by pressing enter. Next it asks us for a passphrase, and this is useful if we want to make it a little bit more secure on our computer. Without this, somebody could easily connect to our remote repository from our computer. If we're not particularly worried about anybody accessing our computer, then we don't have to worry about this. But for now, I'm going to type in a password. When I do, you won't see any characters here, but it still is there. And then it asks to repeat the password, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. If they don't match, we'll be asked to do it again. And once that's done, it says the identification has been saved into this ID RSA file, and our public key is here at idrsa.pub. And then there's some additional information and some nice ASCII art here. So now our public-private key pair has been generated. If we want to use it to connect to our GitHub account, then we need to upload our public key to our account. I'm going to jump back to the browser where we're in GitHub, working through the step-by-step process of getting set up. And if we scroll down here to step 4, we can add our SSH key to GitHub. And it says on the GitHub site, click Account Settings, click SSH Public Keys, and then click Add Another Public Key. Okay, I'm going to jump back over to my GitHub account. I'm going to click on SSH Public Keys and add another public key. For the title, I'm just going to put the email address, but you could put anything you'd like here. And then for the key here, let's go ahead and jump back to the help. It says, open up the idrsa.pub file with the text editor, and gives us some instructions for showing that if we don't see it. And then we need to copy it exactly as it's written without adding any white space. Let's go ahead and open up that file. I'm going to jump back to my SSH directory here, and then I'm going to open up idrsa.pub. I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire key here, and jump back to the browser, go back to my account, and paste it in the key input here. And I'm going to click Add Key. Now I'm going to jump back to the help, and scroll down here. In this next step, it says to test everything out, and we do so by copying this entire code into the command line. So I'm going to copy it minus this $symbol here. I'm going to jump back to my command line, paste it in, and press Enter. Now we may get one intermediary step, which it outlines on the website. I'm going to jump back there real quick. And it says you would see this information. Now I've already connected to GitHub before I recorded this series, and I've already approved this, so I'm skipping this step, and it jumps straight to this hi username. And if I jump back to the terminal, you see it says, hi change management, you've successfully authenticated. So we're good to go, we're connected. Now I'm going to jump back to the browser here, and there's a couple more optional steps here. It says we can set up our info, we can set up our username and email, and this is what gets added to any of our commit messages that we make to the remote site. Now this is pretty important when you're working with other team members or anticipate working with other team members. This way all of your commits get associated with your account, so it's easy to track what you've done or what you're responsible for. So the 2 bits that we need are our username and our user email. So let's go ahead and copy some of this code here. I'm just going to copy the first bit before the actual first name, last name part. I'm going to copy it and paste it into the terminal here. So now it says git config global username. Now, what this says is that we're using the config command inside of Git. We're passing it the global parameter, which means that we're not setting configuration for just this repository, but it's going to be for any repository that we're using. Now, if we wanted to, we could set configuration for just this repository. But we'll go ahead and keep it as global for now. And then the property that we're going to be modifying is the user.name property. And let's go ahead and add our name and make sure that it's in quotes. I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter. Okay, that should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the browser. And this next line sets our user email using the same command structure here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the initial part of it and paste it into the terminal. And then I'm going to add my email here. Again, making sure that it's in quotes, and I'm going to hit Enter. Okay, now any commits that we make, either locally or to the remote repository, will have this information associated with it. I'm going to jump back to the browser, and I'm going to scroll down. And just for completion's sake, let's go ahead and do the second step, which is setting up our GitHub token. It says that some tools connect to GitHub without SSH, and so we need to save a token similarly to the way we saved our username and user email. We can find our token by going to Account Settings and then click Account Admin, and we should see our API token here. So I'm going to jump back to the account. I'm going to click on Account Admin, and here's our API token. Okay, So now what do we do with it? I'm going to jump back to help and I'm going to scroll down, and it says that we're going to set 2 additional configuration properties, the github.user and the github.token. So we can go ahead and copy this. I'm just going to copy the initial part and paste it onto the command line. So it says git config global GitHub user. And then I'm going to put my username, which is change management, and hit enter. Okay. I'm going to jump back to the browser. And now we want to set the GitHub token, and we're going to use that token that's on our account. So I'm going to copy the first part again and paste it onto the command line. So it says git config global GitHub token. And I'm going to jump back to the browser and go to my account and copy this token right here. I'm going to go back to the command line and paste it in. So we have a space and then our token, and I'm going to hit enter. So now we're connected up and we have all of our configurations set up.